And there is criticism of the Soviet Union from people like Putin over time.
Yes.
I mean, some of it's that it was too soft, actually,
Right.
at the end. But what is Vladimir Putin as an ideologue? Is there an ideology beyond the fact that Russia should be a great power and this is our birthright?
I think there is. And I think he should be called an ideologue. I think that's the proper term. And I think we in the West, and most certainly when I was in the government, underestimated the ideological element of Putin. I can't tell you how many times I heard he's a transactional guy. We just kind of could do a deal. President Trump talks that way. You know, he's a transactional guy. We're just going to do a deal. Well, no. Yes, he's the richest, maybe one of the richest people in the world. Yes, he's a kind of criminal character, and he's also an ideologue. By the way, Stalin was all of those things too.
Yeah, sure.
And Putin is too. And I think there are two elements, core elements to Putinism. One is anti-liberalism. So and that wasn't always the case. I met Putin in 1991. So we go way back. We're not Facebook friends, but I've known the guy and I know his circle of people. And
was he in St. Petersburg at the time?
He was a deputy mayor of St. Petersburg when I met him. He was in charge of international relations.
Yeah.
And so I was there with a pro-democracy NGO, and he was our counterpart. And we did these conferences about how to adopt city budgets in democratic societies. We had these LA, actually from New York City and LA councilmen. It was thinking about it in retrospect because they just had elections, and we were talking to them about how it works in democratic societies. And he was he organized the conferences.
This is 91.
91.
So, but that tells you so much about him and his aspirations, considering he was a KGB functionary in Dresden.
Yes.
And managed to become the deputy mayor of St. Petersburg in a space of a couple of years?
Yes. And
that's an ambitious person.
And he wants the whole world to forget about this history.
Yeah.
Because his revisionist history is he was against the collapse of the Soviet Union, and he was a nationalist, and he was against Yeltsin and all that stuff. But the truth is, he was a careerist, and like a lot of KGB guys back then, I knew quite a few of them, by the way, back then. They scrambled for the future, and he was protesting in August 1991, the coup that unraveled, and then the Soviet Union collapsed. There are photos of him on the streets with Sobchak.
Yeah,
and then
by the way, if anyone, there's a film that nobody has seen, but it is a Ukrainian filmmaker named Sergei Loznitsa, and he does all these films.
I don't even know it.
That are just only found for. He has one called The Trial, which is just footage from a Stalinist trial in the 1930s, and there is one from 91 in Sobchak, and they're getting out of a car, and I would paused it and sent it to a Russian friend. I said, "That's Putin getting out of the back of the car," and it's in the film. I can't remember the name of the film, but I'll put it in the description.
Well, thanks for telling me. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, you would be fascinated because there's no voiceover.
Right.
It's just that moment and all footage from that moment, and Putin keeps popping up.
Right. But and then he loses his job because of a free and fair election. By the way, Sobchak loses, and he gets picked up by the Kremlin, Boris Yeltsin's Kremlin. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
And then he gets a small-time job, a kind of mid-level bureaucrat working for Yeltsin, and then he later moves up the ranks and becomes prime minister, and then he's anointed by Yeltsin to become president. So this notion that he was against all this is complete revisionist history. But I'm not answering your question. What changed over time? I think a couple of things changed. So when he became president, he was pretty market-oriented, right? He passed a 13% flat tax income tax.
That's right.
That's a Hoover Institution idea that has never happened in America, but he did it. He cut the corporate tax. He had all these kind of market reformers around him at the time. He was not anti-West. He himself talks about Russia should join NATO.
NATO, yeah.
Very famous interview in 2000. So this notion that he's always been against NATO, facts don't support that. You got to have facts to support your hypotheses. He was never pro-democracy. So he came in right away, and the first thing he does is he cracks down on independent media. He changes the ownership. This will be an echo of our times here in America, to get control of their leading independent TV station. It's called NTV. And then 2 years later, he takes down one of the more critical TV shows called Puppets, Kukli. This fantastic, making fun of all politicians, but he didn't like it. But he was not anti-Western. He was not anti-markets. And I think...
And he allowed some independent media for a long time, right? Echo Moscow.
That's right.
And Radio Rain TV, which
Rain TV came along.
And, Novaya Gazeta, which is a small paper. Novaya Gazeta is sort of intellectuals paper. And then journalists from there are getting killed, like Anna Politskaya.
Right.
But there is some semblance of an opposition. There are protests on the street. I mean, you could have people who are opposition leaders who are not immediately arrested and go to jail. All of that's changed, right? I mean, and that is probably in the past 5 years when it really got terrible. But it's been bad. But he allowed that for a while, right?
He did, and especially there was this interregnum where there was this guy, President Medvedev, who was a kind of, at the time, he's gone completely crazy now. Yeah, he's completely crazy
on Twitter and the rest of it.
He's decided, because he's not a KGB agent like the rest of Putin's entourage, he's got to be more radical than all of them.
Yeah.
He's just gone crazy. But I used to know him pretty well. And when he was president, he thought of himself as a second Gorbachev. And all those, that's when TV Rain starts. That's when Navalny starts his
famously visits their office.
He does. Yeah. And the one time, when I was ambassador, I was blamed that Obama had sent me to foment revolution against Putin. That's the way the Putin propagandists talked about me. The only time I met all of the opposition together was when I was walking into President Medvedev's house and they were all walking out. That was the only time we ever met. We were there to talk about something else. I was there with a senator. But back to, I want to finish on Putin because I think it's really important to understand him. So he's allowing this stuff, and then he lets Medvedev become president, right? And there's this kind of weird moment. There's opening. That's when there's more cooperation with the West. But over time, he becomes more conservative, and liberal stuff, gay rights, all these things get more and more. He's closer to the church, and we got to get rid of this because it's against what he defines as Russian values. Yeah. And that's an evolution over time.
Which is, by the way, a very positive evolution from his point of view when it came to making allies with parties in both people in the United States, people in Western Europe, who oppose, the idea that Russia was this great anti-woke culture really took hold with some exceptionally stupid people, but they believed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first memo I got when I was ambassador where there was a group of evangelical leaders from, I can't remember the state, but a southern state in the United States meeting with the Russian Orthodox Church to talk about our shared conservative Christian values and who paid for this, how did they get here, why are they here? So that was happening then. But then, so that's one piece of his evolution. But the other one you hinted at, he's a straight up imperialist. Yeah. And he thinks, and by the way, he might be right. I hope he's wrong, but he might be right, that he wants to be remembered in the Russian history books next to Peter the Great and Catherine the Great as great Russian czars that expanded the Russian Empire. And that's what he's doing today. So it's these conservative values plus this imperial stuff within the neighborhood, not recreating the Soviet Union. You're right. You mentioned a few minutes ago, he blames the Bolsheviks for dividing the Slavic nation, right? Yeah. He blames Lenin for creating this artificial thing called Ukraine, and then he blames us for the collapse in 1991, and Khrushchev too. Yeah. So he's not a Bolshevik, but he's a straight up imperialist.